My name is Daniel Carter. I was a crisis negotiator for 11 years. In that time, I talked down armed men from rooftops, sat across tables from people who had nothing left to lose, and learned one truth that most people never discover. Silence is the most powerful thing a human being can possess. I never yelled. I never begged. My father yelled. My father begged. And every person he loved eventually walked away from the noise. I made a vow at 9 years old that I would never beg anyone to love me. Not once, not ever. I want you to remember that vow because everything that happens next comes from it. He has no idea. Daniel is the most oblivious man on the planet. He wouldn't notice if I had Jason's name tattooed on my forehead. Those are my wife's words. I was standing in the hallway outside our bedroom. Coat still on, keys still in my hand. I had come home early. The door was slightly open. Her voice carried. So did his laughter, thin and scratchy through her phone speaker. The laugh of a man who thought he was winning something. I stood in that hallway for 11 seconds. I counted. Old negotiator habit. When everything in you wants to react, you count. You breathe. You think 3 moves ahead instead of 1. Then I turned around, walked back out the front door, sat in my car, and called my attorney. That was 3 days before I left, but I had known for 6 weeks before that. The morning of the eggs, the morning I'm starting with. Emily came downstairs freshly showered. Her phone face down against her palm the way it always was now. A habit she developed over the past few months that she thought I hadn't noticed. She kissed my cheek. I smiled. I played her eggs. I poured her coffee. She told me she had a late work event and wouldn't be home until 10 o'clock. And I nodded and said, "Okay, babe." Like a man who had absolutely no idea his world had already ended, and he had already begun quietly rebuilding it without her. On the wall behind me, in my home office, just off the kitchen, hung a framed award from the City Crisis Unit. 11 years of service. Emily used to joke that I was impossible to read. She called it coldness. What she never understood was that it was precision. There is a difference. She picked up her bag, kissed my cheek again, and left. I watched her car reverse out of the driveway. Then I picked up my phone and typed a message to my attorney. She just left. I'll have everything by end of week. I put the phone in my pocket. I finished my eggs. Let me take you back 6 weeks before the morning of the eggs. Because that's where this really starts. Not with a dramatic confrontation. Not with a screaming match in the kitchen. But with a burgundy key card in a coat pocket that smelled faintly of someone else's cologne. I was picking up Emily's dry cleaning. Routine errand. The kind of thing I did without being asked. Because that was who I was in our marriage. The person who noticed what needed doing and did it quietly. The dry cleaner had folded everything neatly into a plastic sleeve. And I was loading it into the back seat when something fell out of her coat pocket and landed on the asphalt. A hotel key card, burgundy. The name of the hotel embossed in gold on the front. I picked it up, turned it over, stood in that parking lot for a long moment. The way you stand when your brain receives information that your heart hasn't processed yet. We had never stayed at that hotel. I knew that immediately. I have the kind of memory that catalogs details without effort. Another negotiator habit. Every hotel receipt, every anniversary trip, every overnight conference Emily had ever attended was filed somewhere in my mind with quiet precision. This card belonged to none of them. I took a photo of it, put it back in the pocket, drove home, started dinner. That night, I searched the hotel's location. 12 minutes from Emily's office. I searched Jason next. It didn't take long. Emily had mentioned him once for months earlier casually. The way you mention someone. You're hoping your partner won't. Think twice about. There's this guy Jason at work. Total extrovert. Kept the whole retreat entertaining. She'd smile when she said it. I'd smile back. I filed it. Sales director. 34 years old. LinkedIn profile photo of a man who knew exactly how he looked in a fitted jacket. I closed my laptop, walked to my home office, looked at the framed award on the wall. 11 years of learning to stay calm when everything around me was unraveling. My father never learned that. He came home loud. And left louder and wondered why. Everyone eventually stopped waiting for him. I was not my father. I picked up my phone and called my attorney. Not to file anything yet, just to ask a question. If I wanted to begin protecting assets quietly and legally, where would we start? He told me. I listened. I took notes. Then I went to bed, lay beside my wife, and stared at the ceiling with the stillness of a man who had just decided exactly how this was going to end. I need to tell you something about Emily before I tell you what I heard that night, because it would be easy to paint her as a villain, and the truth is more complicated than that. And I have always believed that complicated truths are the only ones worth telling. Emily Owens, Emily Carter after we married, was 26 years old when I proposed. She was broke, genuinely frightened of her future, and carrying a kind of quiet desperation she was too proud to name out loud. And that one sentence is what I've spent the most time sitting with since all of this happened. Not the anger, not the betrayal, that sentence. Because if I'm being ruthlessly honest with myself, I gave Emily consistency and security and quiet devotion. And I never once told her she was the kind of woman men write songs about. I don't say this to excuse what she did. I say it because I promised myself I would tell this story with the same precision I brought to every negotiation, which means telling the whole truth, not just the parts that make me look good. That said, what she said about me in that hallway was something I have not yet fully forgiven. It was a Tuesday. I had come home 40 minutes early because a meeting was cancelled. The house felt different the moment I stepped inside. A particular quality of silence that didn't match a house where someone was simply upstairs reading or resting. It was the silence of someone who believed they were alone. I set my keys on the table by the door. I heard her voice before I reached the stairs. The bedroom door was open 3 inches. Her laugh came first, light and loose. The laugh I hadn't heard her aim at me in almost a year. Then his voice thin through the phone speaker. Then hers again, settling into something quieter and more dangerous. He has no idea. Daniel is the most oblivious man on the planet. He wouldn't notice if I had Jason's name tattooed on my forehead. His laughter, hers joining it. I stood in that hallway and I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. On 11, something inside me that had been quietly bending. 6 weeks went completely still. Not broken still. The way a negotiator goes still when the situation has finally revealed its full shape and there is nothing left to assess, only action left to take. I turned around, walked back to the front door, picked up my keys from the table where I had set them 30 seconds earlier, walked out, pulled the door shut behind me with the softest click. I could manage because I did not want her to hear me leave. Not yet. I sat in my car in the driveway for 4 minutes. I didn't grip the steering wheel. I didn't hit anything. I sat with my hands loose in my lap and I breathed the way I'd been trained to breathe. And I called my attorney and said 3 words. We are moving forward. He said, I'll have the papers ready by end of week. I said, thank you. I hung up, started the car, and drove to the apartment I had already quietly leased across the city. The one Emily didn't know existed. The one I had been preparing for 3 weeks. The one with 1 shelf of books and a journal on the desk and enough stillness in it to help a man think clearly about the most precise, dignified exit he would ever make in his life. I did not go back home that night. I told Emily my meeting ran late and turned into drinks with a colleague. She said, no worries, babe. She sounded relieved. 3 days before I left, I made Emily's favorite dinner: roasted chicken, garlic potatoes, the wine from our first date, a bottle I had been saving for our 5th anniversary, which was 4 months away. I opened it anyway. Some occasions choose themselves. She came home and stopped in the kitchen doorway, genuinely surprised. Something soft moved across her face, something that might have been real feeling, the kind that predates all the damage people do to each other. What's the occasion? She asked. No occasion, I said. Just wanted to take care of you. We ate. We talked about ordinary things. A television show she was watching. A difficult coworker who wasn't. Jason. A road on the commute that was being repaved. She laughed twice. Real laughs. I watched her the way I had watched every subject across every negotiating table. Complete attention. Perfect stillness. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and something behind her eyes switched off like a light in a room where someone has just remembered they're supposed to be somewhere else. She turned the phone face down, looked back at me, smiled. But the smile came half a second too late. And I noticed. I always noticed. I picked up my wine glass, took a slow sip, said nothing. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. I wrote something, read it back, crossed it out, wrote it again. 5 words this time. I read them 3 more times, folded the paper with careful creases, and put it in my shirt pocket. Then I sat in the dark kitchen of the home we had built together and finished the anniversary wine alone. The apartment was on the 14th floor. Clean lines, minimal furniture, 1 shelf of books I actually wanted to read. It smelled like fresh paint and quiet. 2 things our house hadn't smelled like in a long time. I want you to see the desk, because on that desk sat a journal open to an entry dated exactly 6 weeks before the morning of the eggs. Hotel key card. Burgundy. Not a hotel we've ever stayed at. Check the location. 12 minutes from her office. Name, Jason Blake. Sales Director. 34. She met him at the April retreat. She mentioned him once casually. The way people mention things they hope you'll forget. I won't forget. I've been watching. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Every dinner I cooked during those 6 weeks, I knew. Every morning I poured her coffee, I knew. Every night I lay beside her in the dark and listened to her breathing slow in sleep. I knew. I watched Jason's car slow down on our street twice. I saw Emily's phone light up at 11 o'clock p.m. and saw her smile at the screen before turning it away from me. I documented everything. Dates, times, the restaurant receipt. I found in her coat pocket the week after the keycard. 2 people. A night she was supposedly in another city for a conference. I photographed it, replaced it, said nothing. The camera in my mind. The 11 years of negotiation work had sharpened into something surgical. Recorded all of it without flinching. On the desk beside the journal sat a manila folder. The tab read, filed, awaiting service. Divorce papers dated 5 weeks ago. 1 phone call away from being delivered to Emily Carter at the address we still shared. I had been ready for weeks. I was just waiting. 2 days before I left, I called Margaret Owens. Emily's mother was 63 years old, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and possessed of a moral clarity that her daughter had somehow not inherited. She had driven 3 hours to visit us in March, 7 months into the affair. Though I didn't know the full timeline then, I knew now. And I knew that Margaret had sat in our kitchen and watched her daughter and seen something. I could tell by the way Margaret had hugged me goodbye at the door longer than usual, with a tightness that felt like an apology for something she hadn't said. The phone rang twice. She answered. Margaret, I'm calling because you deserve to hear this from me before it becomes a public proceeding. Silence. Then the sound of a woman lowering herself into a chair. I told her everything calmly. Completely. The key card. The receipt. The hallway. The attorney. The papers already filed. She cried softly for a moment. I waited. Then she said something I was not prepared for. Daniel, I've been waiting for this call for 8 months. I closed my eyes. I saw things when I visited in March. I didn't know how to tell you. A pause. I always told her she didn't deserve you, Margaret said quietly. I told her that to her face. She didn't want to hear it. Another pause settled between us. Where will you go? She asked. Somewhere quiet, I said. Good, she replied. You've earned quiet. I thank her, ended the call, and set the manila folder beside my pack bag. The next morning, 5:43 a.m., everything was ready. I moved through the house like water. No rushing. No sneaking. Just deliberate, quiet movement through rooms that had held 4 years of a marriage. Some of it genuinely good. That matters even now. I washed my coffee cup, dried it, and put it back exactly where it belonged. I wiped the counter, folded the dish towel the way I always did. Then I walked to the kitchen table. I placed my wedding ring in the exact center. Not thrown, not dropped, centered. Beside it, I placed the folded note, perfectly aligned. I stood there for 3 seconds. The entire architecture of a marriage reduced to a circle of gold and 5 folded words. Then I picked up my bag and walked to the door. I did not look back. Across the street, a light was on in Mrs. Eleanor Chen's window. She was standing there with one hand over her mouth, watching. I nodded once. Then I got in my car and drove away. 3 hours later, Emily's car pulled into the driveway. She was singing along to the radio. She pushed the front door open with her shoulder, dropped her bag in the hallway, and called my name once. The house answered with silence. She walked into the kitchen. She saw the table. She picked up the ring first, turning it slowly in her fingers. Then she picked up the note. Her hands began to shake. She unfolded it. Read it. And her legs stopped working. She slid slowly down the cabinet to the floor. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just a quiet collapse. She sat there staring at the note. Her phone rang. Jason Blake. She looked at his name on the screen. Let it ring. Then let voicemail take it. Days later, Mrs. Eleanor Chen watched Jason arrive. She had seen his car 4 times before. She had written down the license plate each time. Old court stenographer habits never die. He knocked on her door first. She opened it before his knuckles finished the second knock. "You're Jason," she said flatly. He blinked. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" "No, but I know you. I've seen your car here 4 times. I have your license plate written down with dates and times." He stood there, unsure. "I'm just looking for Emily." "I know what you're looking for," Mrs. Eleanor Chen said calmly. "And I know what you cost that family." Then she closed the door. Later, he knocked on Emily's door. Margaret Owens answered. "I'm her mother," she said quietly. Jason shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just a colleague." "I know exactly who you are," Margaret interrupted. "Daniel called me before he left. He told me everything. Calmly. Respectfully. With more dignity than this situation deserved." She stepped forward slightly. "My daughter doesn't want to see you. And if you return here again, the license plate Mrs. Eleanor Chen documented will be forwarded to the attorney who already holds the divorce filing." Then she closed the door. A week later, Margaret finally asked about the note. Emily had been carrying it for 7 days. Margaret unfolded it slowly. "Read it." Her hand trembled once. Then she set it on the table. "Emily," she said quietly, "he didn't curse you. He didn't threaten you. He didn't accuse you." Emily nodded. The note lay between them. 5 words written in Daniel's calm, precise handwriting. "I hope you find peace." Emily covered her face with both hands. And finally, she cried. Not shock. Not denial. Understanding. Her phone buzzed on the table. An email notification. Subject: Notice of divorce proceeding Carter versus Carter. Filed 5 weeks earlier. 5 weeks. I had been ready for 5 weeks. On the 14th floor, the morning light came in clean and honest. I made coffee the same way I always had. Same ritual. Same patience. But it tasted different. Because now I wasn't performing calm. I was simply living it. At 9:14 a.m., my phone rang. My attorney. "It's done, Daniel." She signed. "Thank you," I said. I hung up and stood at the window. Below me, the city moved normally. Taxis. People. Steam rising from food carts. No one down there knew what had happened. No one could see the 11 years of training that allowed a man to walk away. With 1 bag and 5 words. My father never learned that. He yelled. He begged. And people left. I made a vow at 9 years old. I kept it. My phone buzzed again. A message. "Daniel, it's Emily. I know you don't owe me anything. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know that." Note was the kindest and most devastating thing anyone has ever said to me. I'm sorry for all of it. I read it twice, set the phone face down, looked out at the city, and smiled. A small, quiet smile. The smile of a man who made a vow at 9 years old and never broke it. The smile of a man who had finally come home to himself. Fade out.